And now, the moment you all have been waiting for. It's time for the Rad and Bad podcast by Hickory Learning Group. Here are your hosts, Mike Carrero and Sean Yoakum.
What's going on, Rad and Bad crew? You're back with the Rad and Bad podcast, where we keep it clinical and critical, Mikey.
Amen.
Clinical and critical. That's my new tag, right? Pushing past the fluff and diving into the real mess of modern ABA. I'm Sean Yoakum, BCBA, LBA. With me, as always, this guy over here, Mr. Mike Carrera. I'm Sean. Howdy. Today's topic, let's get into it, Mike. Coordination or collaboration of care. Sounds pretty vanilla, right?
Yeah, the reality is you can't have one without the other, but you got to start somewhere, and that means we got to start collaborating and working together in order for us to actually make a difference and start benefiting our kids, families, and fields.
I agree with you. We can't sleep on it, number one, because that's where things get real, right? With that coordination of care, because working with other disciplines, it's either I like to say it's either like a power move or a powder keg. It's gonna blow up in your face if you don't do it right, and just making sure that you're hitting all the appropriate avenues when you're working with other disciplines.
Well, you said it. You came out hot with it, but that example of it being a powder keg is very, very true, especially when we talk about who's right versus who's wrong, because that's the approach that everybody takes. And plot twist, it's not about who's right or who's wrong, or who's going to, quote, stay in their lane, or who's the subject matter expert. At the end of the day, what is our why? Our why is we, as a team, are here to help this individual. And if we care, then I check my ego at the door. And that means that it's not about me being right. It's about me doing the best that I can to benefit the individual and the family.
Oh, yeah. And I look at it, it's whether you're dealing with like a speech, like an SLP, an OT, teacher, pediatrician, mental health pro. We have to look past that. Our clients don't live in our ABA bubble. Like, we might live in the ABA bubble because we just love ABA so much. But bottom line, they don't live in that bubble. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a real world bubble. No, it's really not the real bubble. But I think it's a good thing that they don't live in the bubble like we do, because we just breathe it all day, but man, it gets complicated.
Yeah. And I think one of the main reasons that it gets complicated is because, let's jump right into it. That's a huge barrier in the field, is ABA is either misunderstood or misrepresented. And I think it's a combination of both, right? We look at ABA as like this magic wand that's going to, quote, fix all of the problems. But that's what it's sold as at times. If you trust me to come into your life and you give me, the ability to support you and the family, then I will, quote, fix all of your problems. But we talked about this a bit last time. What ends up happening?
I know where you're going with
You can do this for one person in one place at one point in the day. Did you learn anything?
Yeah. It's the general, I call it the generalization gains. So when you got everyone rowing in the same direction, that's when the client wins.
100%.
Right? If we're not having the same goal. I forgot the movie I watched. It was on Netflix. It was actually about this coach, and he coaches this Ivy League rowing team. And again, that's the analogy I think of. It's like you're a part of crew. And if there's one person on your, whatever you call it, your little boat, I don't know what you call it in crew, what boat, sure, kayak, canoe, whatever it is. If the whole team is not working in sync, you're not going to see any kind of gains
100%
at all. I figured we can just talk about, I guess, pros and cons with coordination of care, collaboration of care. I know you got tons of stories.
Yeah.
I got tons of stories as well.
I think we start with collaboration because that leads into coordination of care, right? Because when we talk about coordination of care, we're talking about now that we've all come together as a team, what is the direction that we are going to use? Number one, that's the direction that's based off of the individual and family. Let's never forget that everything that we're here for, we lead from the center. The individual and their family are right in the center of everything that we do. And then based off of what their needs are, we identify and support those values and go, this is how you accomplish that mission, right? So as long as we understand that's the foundation that we're going to set. So some of the pros, treatment package, right?
Yes.
When you and all of the related service providers and the school and whoever is involved in that treatment team is working together, we get a lot of exposure to a lot of wonderful things, which means the ability to get past your current barriers and get more skill acquisition or learn new things and really promote more independence is going to happen, A, a lot faster because you're getting a lot more exposure, and B, it's going to happen a lot easier because you don't get as much contrast, right?
Great.
Because one of the things that we see all the time is the rules, quote unquote, are different everywhere you go.
Oh, yes.
Right? If it's mom versus dad, if it's school versus home, if it's home versus clinic, all of the rules are different. And when the rules are different, we get real confused, right? But if we can work together to minimize those things, this can be a really wonderful thing, which then leads into the next one is integrity, right? If we're all doing the same thing consistently, now we can figure out if we're all doing the same thing right. Because just because you're doing the thing does not mean you're doing it effectively or correctly. It means you're doing something, right? And then with that happening, guess what? If they can do it for me and their service provider
And me too.
and the parents and all of the other individuals that are supporting them, what have we achieved? Generalization. Which means they can do it everywhere else, and they're getting a consistent level of care and consistent engagement in their environment.
I love those pros. It's funny because I wrote down a couple pros too, and you literally took, I think, 3 out of the 5 that I wrote down. I put a little bullet here: holistic AF. I'm trying to beat that. I'm trying to be that cool Gen Z. I don't even know what I'm a millennial, I guess, an elder millennial, whatever I am. I'm old, but holistic AF. Like, be honest. No one discipline can do it all.
Yep.
Right? We're a piece of the puzzle, and I think that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes when you're in the field of ABA, because we're told that we are like the gold standard and we're evidence based, but so is every other discipline out there has some sort of evidence behind it.
Well, we wouldn't work with them if they weren't.
Correct. So we've got our piece of the puzzle, but without the others, that's like trying to put together a puzzle that's missing a bunch of pieces. Mm-hmm. That would frustrate the hell out of me, right? You mentioned generalization gain. So like I said, when everyone's rowing in that same direction with the same goal and everyone's doing everything consistently, that's when the client wins. That's when you start to see that skills will start to stick. That's when you see progress scaling to a level where it's across all environments. I love that you brought that up. I also think when you collaborate, it gives you the opportunity to have that cross-training. I put cross-training gold mine, right? So it's like, we're not just collaborating, we're leveling up our skill set too, because anytime I try to collaborate, I try to look for something that an OT, an SLP, a counselor is doing. And if I can figure out a way how to put it into the ABA practice, I am going to do it because that's only going to just sharpen my skills and add more tools in the toolbox. I also think one thing that I don't think we really talked about was client first advocacy. Mm-hmm. So when are you really working in a united front if you're not willing to coordinate care with other providers? Correct. Now, we've seen this down here where, we want to coordinate, but then we get a little bit of pushback. Yep. And people don't want to, and we'll touch on that. That's in the hot take section as to why we think that's happening. But that's how we get funding, right? Yep. That's how you get IEP support. That's how you see real change with your clients. And then the final one I put was professional growth. Think about every time you link up with someone outside, I put the echo chamber. Every time you link up with someone outside of the ABA bubble, you start to sharpen your own clinical chops. And, I say with my baseball players, when I work with the 8U kids, my coaches look at me and they're like, we got to go enter this tournament. And I'm like, okay, we go enter that tournament. It's a bunch of 0-10 baseball teams, right? Cool. Yeah, we can go there and win a championship. But are those kids actually getting better at baseball? No, because
the other team is, though.
The other team is, though, because if you're constantly going up against lesser competition, or right, you're constantly surrounding yourself with people that don't have skill sets, right? You're not getting any better at your trade, right?
100%.
So when you start to work with other people outside of your trade, that's like when I look at tournaments to enter, I'm like, where's the tournaments that got the AAA and major level teams? Like the teams that are 10-1, the teams that are like beating up on everybody. That's the teams that I want to play because I know that steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron.
Yep.
So like when you look to coordinate care, that's what we should be looking at outside of the client first advocacy. It should be, what can I learn from you that's going to make me an even better BCBA?
Exactly. And I think you touched on a really good point of like not only honing our skills, but learning something from that service provider or whomever is in that treatment team. We have the wonderful ability to do an extensive amount of support and hours of service, depending on the family and the needs, right?
That's an advantage for us.
Exactly.
Right now, based
and
on
it's
how it's set up.
No stranger to the fact that when we look at related service providers, how many hours do they get a week?
Ooh, they're lucky if they
30
get,
minutes, maybe
they're
an
lucky
hour,
if they get 0.5 hours.
right? You might get a half hour.
Oh.
So if we can work together, guess what? I can take that 30 minutes of speech, that 30 minutes of OT, 30 minutes of PT, 30 minutes of school readiness, what have you, and guess what? I can run that for 5, 10, 15, X amount of hours into support that individual and not only learning that new skill, but expanding it if we're able to work together. And I think speech is a wonderful, one of the most important ones in that aspect of things, because you're not going to learn something in 30 minutes.
No.
Especially with a difficult skill that's new, that you need consistent support and training on in 30 minutes.
Yep.
Right? But if I can do it for hours and not only support the individual, but also support their family, because I can be your support and soundboard as the provider and say, hey, I know what we were looking to do, and here's how we continue to do that. And guess what? That 30 minutes of speech or service turns into hours of support that now has more independence and more opportunity for generalization. And guess what?
What?
The parents have more buy-in.
Yes.
Because now they're seeing effective treatment as a result of us working together. Because I go to speech, I don't see any progress. I go to OT, I don't see any progress. I go to ABA, I don't see any progress. That's because we're all working on the same types of goals, but they're all coded differently, and we're all doing different things, which I totally understand why that's not going to be effective.
Yeah. And you bring a great point, because that gets into the cons section, what you were just talking about right there. I think that's a great segue. Because let's call them what they are. It's not really cons. It's like collisions. It's like head-on collisions with people, and you're just like, why can't we get this to work together? Like, what's happening here? Like, just listen to me. And then they're like, no, you listen to me. And then you get into this struggle. But, let's talk about cons. I figured you went first with pros, so
I can go again.
You want to flip a coin? I mean, we can flip a coin. We can do rock, paper, scissors. All right, let's do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Ooh, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. What is that?
I'm just going to let you have it based off if it's a W and you win. There you go.
Why did I throw up 3 fingers?
You win. Good job.
Oh, that's amazing. In case you're wondering, we just played rock, paper, scissors, and Mike threw up paper, and I just threw up 3 fingers. So
you got a short sheet of paper.
I have no idea what that was. my brain just glitched. It literally, I was like, okay, here.
This is good.
All right, 3. Whatever that means. All right, cons. Let's talk about them. You said it, like clashing worldviews. Number one, that's the first thing I think of. So like, we're known for being in our field like database, right? So we're out there with data sheets. And, we might notoriously, when I start working with SLPs or OTs or PTs, this is not a knock on them, but it kind of is, because I've read some SLP reports when I ask to coordinate care, and they hand me a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, it's like, the client will do this skill, 30% independently. And I'm like,
or with prompts.
Or it says like, they will master this skill prompted. It's basically like saying they will do this when I force compliance. That's basically, that's a great job. Yeah, you got them to do it, right? But it's like, really? Right? So it's like someone else saying like, I just feel like this works. Right? That's like the vibe I get whenever I try to, coordinate care with other providers. But again, that's me not knowing what their requirements are for data collection or what the reports are supposed to look like. But when I look at that, I'm like, respectfully, nah. Like, show me your data. I also put down here a little talking point. I put down Tower of Babel vibes. Like everyone's got their own dialect, right? Yep. So like we have our terminology that we use. So like when we start talking about like communication, for an example, we start talking about like function-based communication and verbal behavior. Peep the shirt. If you want to get some ABA swag.
Happy little behaviors.
But yeah, like everyone's got their own dialect. And if we can't figure out how to speak speechies or OTEs or, I don't know, physical therapian. I tried to do one with like Italian.
I like it.
Right? If we can't figure out those dialects and we can't code switch, well, then we're going to confuse, we're going to alienate our team. Like, and if we don't teach, if they can't figure out what we're saying, it's like we're just talking in different languages. The other one I put here, because this is all too important in our field, but I put like free labor, anyone? Right? Anybody want to work for free? Because a lot of times when you do coordination of care, you can't bill for it.
Yep.
Right? So you're looking at meetings, emails, follow-ups. Coordination takes time, right? So when you look at that, guess what? Time ain't always billable.
Yep.
So who wants to do that?
When we look at that, someone always wants to occupy the bill, right? If I asked, Sean, can I come and like observe you? The first question is, well, who's going to bill? Mm-hmm. My answer is always, I'm not here for that.
Yep.
I'm here to watch and learn, right? Now, there are some cases where, like, we'll just figure it out. Like, you get half, I get half. It doesn't matter. We'll learn from each other and, like, do true collaboration. It's far and few between, right? But that's the majority of the experience. Well, I can't do that because we can't bill at the same time.
Yep.
It's not about money.
Yeah.
Nope.
Shouldn't
Next. Be. I don't need it. We're good, right?
I'm good. My pocket's
and then
filled.
They look at us like we have 5 heads because they're like, you're not going to bill? And we're like, no, I need to learn. It's not important right now.
Oh, yeah.
The skills that I'm going to learn are important so that I can do the right thing. But I do want to play devil's advocate. And you said something about how we have to learn to speak the other languages and that there's frustrations across different dialects of like domains. So one of the things that we also have to realize as professionals is we're not always right. And when we're talking about those things, that it doesn't come from this like pious like pillar, right? Because especially in our field, because we have such a, I'm going to say breadth of knowledge, because we should continue to learn always, because we have such a wide scope of practice when it comes to what we can do and how we do it and the research that's available, that we sometimes get on a high horse, right? And I think all of us at times in our careers have been like, well, what do you know about that, right? You didn't go to school for that. You don't have the certificate, and we make it personal, right? And I think we do that across providers at times, and we have to learn and be humbled of like, it's not about me. And I think the second part is sometimes we have to have those tough conversations with each other of like, what are you doing right now? Why did you choose this intervention? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? And I do this with all of my RBTs. Anytime I've ever worked with an RBT or a supervision student, I give them the why. And I tell them the same statement. If you ever have a question, ask. Because if I don't have an answer, you should not be doing it. If I write a goal and you go, that doesn't make sense, I need you to tell me about it.
Yeah.
Because if I can't give you the justification of the 5, 7, 10 years down the road, then it shouldn't be a goal. And I think one of the big ones that you touched on was functional communication, right? That has such, and I wish we could
That's story time.
We'll get there for that one. But I think that's a hard one that we have to just operationally define your terms versus my terms. Because OT versus PT versus speech versus school versus all of the domains, we all use the same words, but they mean very different things. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not about who's right. It's about with what's going to benefit the individual. What do we need to do, and how do we take a piece of your definition, a piece of my definition, and make one unique definition that supports all of our areas.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks on some. I think I'll let you touch on more cons, but the last one I had, because you got into my hot take too. So we're gonna get back to the hot take with the whole learning how to speak with each other thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a big thing is like no one taught us in school. Like there's not a course on collaboration, I don't think, right? And
we touch on how it's important. Of like, you should work with other people, but I wish, and I think that would be such a great thing for the field to like do as like supervision hours of, hey, I understand that you understand the importance of collaboration, but can you do it? No different than parent training, right? Nobody showed me how to work with families. Nobody. I passed my exam, they gave me a massive caseload, and I went,
thanks.
Okay. Have you seen The Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
You know the little dude that goes, I'm in danger. That's exactly how I felt. Because I had a massive caseload and they went, do it. And I went, but I know how to do it differently and you're telling me something totally different.
Yeah, no one teaches you. You don't have any training when you're really in school for it. It's like expected, like you're supposed to know how to collaborate. And it shows because, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for the other disciplines, but I don't think they're taught how to collaborate either. I think it's a universal problem within all of the industries.
Yes.
What were some of your other hot takes?
So one of the other ones that I have is like, you've heard the expression too many hands in a soup?
Too many cooks. You ever see that?
No, go ahead.
Oh my, okay.
Quick tangent.
All right, quick tangent. So there was this Adult Swim show.
Okay.
All right, so Adult Swim. I used to watch Adult Swim all the time. But there was this show, and this is a shout out to my boy Chris Perez back in New Jersey and Emily Mann. But we used to die laughing because we found this clip, and it was a show on Adult Swim called Too Many Cooks. And all it was just basically the opening credits of a sitcom, and they just kept announcing like different people in the sitcom, and it just got really messed up. I'm talking like weird characters. Like at one point, I think the devil was there. Then there was like people killing each other. It was weird. It was a weird thing.
Sounds it.
But the whole show was just the intro to a sitcom. And it had a theme. And it was like, too many cooks. Oh, there's too many cooks. So if you get a chance, watch that. But when you said too many hands in the soup, I thought too many cooks. But go ahead, Mike.
So I think, and that kind of highlights it perfectly, is there's a fine line between collaboration and ownership, right? And when we get too many people involved, not that it's
Who's
a
in
bad
charge?
thing, that question right there. And if we have to ask that question, we're all in the wrong. Because nobody is the end-all be-all, right? We can go back and forth and we identify what the most important thing is for the situation. And whoever is the person that quote-unquote can be in charge, they're going to guide the ship for that next direction. Because if this is a behavioral issue, maybe it's us. If this is a gross motor skill, maybe it's PT. If this is fine motor, maybe it's OT. If this is communication-based, let's look at speech.
If it's academic, it should be the school teacher.
Bingo. And we use those people, and we should approach it from a, how do I help you with this? Not a, if you do this, it'll fix it. And that's where we get very separated on those things, because you don't want to hear what I have to say, because your history has shown that I'm just going to tell you what to do. And let's be real, most of the time, the things that we are going to ask each other to do are not always realistic. And that's not fair to anybody, especially the individual.
No.
Now, another big one kind of goes into that ownership aspect of things, but too many opinions, right? So one of the things that we also see is, again, mentalism versus behaviorism, right? If we're looking at things from an objective lens, we can only see and talk about what we're physically seeing and happening, right? And so many times in meetings and different situations is, well, I think they're doing it for this reason. And then you and I look kind of bad at times because we're like, well, actually, tell me more.
Show me the data.
And that gets thrown around all the time. And like, well, I have data to prove it. And I'm like, but you don't have that data isn't the right type of data. You have great data, hopefully, but that doesn't support or disprove what we're talking about. And we use a lot of those mentalistic and subjective terms where it's like, well, they were sad today. Okay, but how did you know? I'm not saying they weren't.
So what did it look like? What did sad
Just
look like?
give me more information so I can give you more guidance and support, because my probing questions come from a place of I'm trying to better understand it through my lens so I can support you and yours. And I think there's a big communication breakdown that leads into that previous point of everyone wants to be right, everyone wants to be heard, and everyone wants to be in charge instead of I'm just really trying to understand. Yeah. And I think that is a universal thing. It's not a us versus them or that kind of a position. I really think as a whole, as human service providers, we need to check our egos, step aside, and say, show me what you do so I can learn from you, and then listen to what I'm saying and you listen to what they're saying, right? Listen to be heard and understood, not just talking to people.
Yeah, it's you hit the nail right on the head. You know, it's back to the point, like it's turf wars.
Yeah.
It's literally turf wars where it's like, who's in charge of the social goals, right? It's me. No, it's me. No, I want to do it. No, my discipline's better. Like whose protocol gets used.
Yep.
Right. And what happens is, and this is where the con is, if we're not careful, guess who becomes the collateral damage? The client. And they get into this collateral damage because of our stupid pissing match over who's right. And it's like, that's what it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like who's right and who's got that bigger thing. And I'll get into that hot take later, but it sounds like we touched on a lot of cons. Do you have any other cons?
I think the only one and you kind of gave it a brief talking point there, is that multi-treatment aspect of things, right? If you're doing one thing and I'm doing one thing and everyone's doing their own thing, but none of us are talking to each other, we are dramatically doing a disservice to the individual. Because let's say you're using a token economy, and we'll use the same things for all intents and purposes, right? You're doing a token economy, and so is another service provider. Their token economy is based off of completion of the activity. Yours is based off of completion of items within the activity. What's going to happen?
Behavior contrast.
A lot of confusion, a lot of behaviors, and we're all going to look at each other, and you're going to go, well, you should try it this way. And they go, well, I'm doing it this way. Again, where's the middle ground? Where do we find that middle ground? How do I support you in that? Because again, we see that contrast all the time. But looking into the future, right? Because again, field-wise, we always do a great job of identifying a problem. But that usually falls short, and everyone's like, I'm mad, and here's why. And no one gives you a reason, right? And no one gives you a way forward. So I think let's talk about that. How do we move past all of these things? Because we've identified the reasons that there are issues. We've identified those barriers. We've identified the pros and the cons, right? What do we do now?
So should we go into like solutions? Do you want to go into like sharing stories of collaboration gone bad? Do you want to get into the hot take? What do you want to do?
I think let's go solutions first. Okay. And we'll talk about what we can do as like a universal concept in terms of like the field of if we all step up, and I'll use education, right? Education is a huge piece in this puzzle. If I can learn from all of the other disciplines and they can learn from us, not only the subject matter, but also the interpretation and the delivery of it, we'll see a better outcome.
Oh yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, if you push your organization, whatever organization you're working for, whether it's, with us or it's with another organization, I think pushing your organization to invest in CEUs and trainings on interdisciplinary skills, or as I like to call transdisciplinary skills, push that for the education. And if they don't, then go out and find your own. Yeah. Like it's not up to them to train yourself. It's your scope of competence. So like, I think if like educating yourself on how to collaborate is a huge solution.
I mean, case in point, stepping outside of our like subject matter expertise, one of the best CEUs that I have ever taken, and I use it so often with a lot of our learners, is the PECS protocol. That was one of the most informative things I have ever learned.
Shout out Andy Bondi.
And yes, it comes from a behavior analytic lens. But again, if I was never exposed to that and said, how do I help this individual? And said, I'm not just going to do ABA, right? I'm not going to search up an ABA CEU on communication. I'm going to search up speech that also might provide. And if it provides a CEU, great. But again, it's not about, does it get me the minimum requirement for me to keep my certification? If I have to invest in myself to get more information, regardless of if I get a CEU out of it. A, I should do that, and B, we should be supporting our staff in doing so, because if we want collaboration and coordination to work, then I have to be every single one of those providers, not to be able to replace them, but be able to supplement them and understand them. And once we do that, guess what? Now we can advocate for each other, because when I know what's supposed to happen, not only can I hold staff accountable on all fronts, I can hold parents and myself and individuals within their disciplines accountable, and I can take it a step further and educate or refer to resource availability, because we work and we close the loop.
It's a full circle. Mm-hmm. Education leads to advocacy goes back to education. Your PEC's point. That's a perfect example of interdisciplinary approach, because PECS was designed by an SLP and a BCBA. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why that works so well, because it's two disciplines coming together to say, hey, look, this is a great way to teach kids communication. Yeah. Like, that's why I love that. Great solutions. Here's one I got. Sorry, I mentioned my eye as we're going into this, but I got a good one. You're going to love this one, Mikey.
Go on.
Okay. So, how about we make collaboration part of our treatment plan, and it's not actually just a checkbox?
I'm here for it.
There's a solution. Yep. It's a requirement. And if you don't do it, guess what? Like, your services aren't going to be funded and your treatment plan's not going to be renewed.
So let me ask you this one. So I'm gonna push back on that one, because it's a good solution, but there's a lot of holes.
So many holes. Right? I'm just thinking, like, that would be fantastic.
If it doesn't come from one organization, right? Because I'll use us, right? With the minimal direct that we do, if we don't have OT-PT speech, right? How do we collaborate with other individuals? How do we require it to be in something if we're not with them?
Let me rephrase that. Attempts to collaborate.
There you go, okay.
Right? Attempts to collaborate and documenting your attempts. Mm-hmm. Not just like, I called Sally at the SLP clinic and left the message, and then there's no more follow-up. Mm-hmm. It's like, document and come up with objective, measurable criteria that says you attempted to coordinate care, and make it where, hey, you need to attempt to coordinate care at least once a month.
I like that. You know what I think would also be super beneficial? Cool. So we see OT, PT, speech. I'm going to use these as examples because these are the ones that, again, from a billing perspective, we all bill separately.
Shout out Little Angels Therapy.
Amen.
Great SLP, OT, PT in our neighborhood.
When we look at coordinating and collaborating, biggest barrier is funding. One of the issues that I believe in terms of progress, if we truly are doing values-based care, is why can I not pull their goal and do that goal? And take data on their goal. Why does my data and all the work that we've done together not count?
Yeah.
Because Timmy's doing the work, right? I'm sitting here and we're doing all of the same goals and we're running it.
Is it measurable?
Yeah.
Did you objectively define it?
Yes.
Then you should be able to take the data on it and report on it.
But why don't we? Right?
I think we can. I think we just don't as a field in general.
But we can report on it individually, but our data is not good for each other.
Oh, meaning our data for them.
Exactly, right? Because again, we write speech goals, right? So I'll use the same one as like PECS, right? So I'll write the PECS protocol out for all 6 phases, and we'll go through individually, right? I can track and measure that, but that falls under the communication umbrella, right? Increasing communication across X, Y, and Z.
That's your DSM-5.
Right? Versus if they're working on verbal sounds, right? And they're doing single syllabic utterances. And they give us a list of the sounds and the words that they're doing and the protocol to follow. And I'm working with Johnny. And guess what? I see that we went from buh to ba to ball in a week. And I took awesome data. I'll even take it a step further. I even gave permanent products of video recording to share between providers. They still can't master it out because they have to see it. Right?
Yeah.
Why can't we truly, and again, this is a bigger scope of things, why can't we work together? Because imagine what would happen from a progress-based thing if I can say, hey, when you had Johnny in the clinic, did they do this? And you go, actually, yeah. He was going up and taking turns with peers and doing all of these other goals. And I go, that's beautiful. let's continue to work on that. Or can you take some data on that and then we pull it and use it together instead of having to wait to see it? Because the people who matter are also seeing it.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is basically being able to take that data to then report on it. I think where it starts is we need to get more curious, right, with other providers, not combative, another solution. Always assume that there's good intent behind what they're doing until they prove otherwise, right? And then
on all fronts too.
On all fronts, including us, all of that stuff. But we should be looking at it and saying, how could we as a provider then take whatever they're working on and make it a goal? And if you're seeing an alignment with goals for this person, because think about it, it's the same person you're working with, right? So you should be having the exact same things that you're working on, right? Unless I'm crazy and like there's different deficits, like when they show up for speech, there's that extreme behavior contrast where they just have different deficits, totally different kids. Yeah. More than likely not going to happen.
And I'll tell you right now, that concept that you're referencing in terms of like we should be able to write goals, I do that. Whether they'll take the information or not, it's still beneficial for me to know. And I do write those goals and I'll say, all right, cool, we're working on this specific one. Let's say it's OT and we're working on fine motor skills, right? I'll supplement it. I won't write the one-for-one goal because we don't need two of the same identical goals, but I'll figure out how to either generalize that skill or teach that in a variety of things. So if you're using like those like shoelace boards, little boards with the little, like it's like a squirrel and you like put the thing through the holes, I'll do like one of those if we're doing like shoe tying, right? Because I'm just building the eyelets. I'm building that small motor dexterity so you can actually be successful with it. Or we'll work on shoe tying because it's an important skill. Now, that's one that I actually did this in supervision the other week. So I was working with our student and we put in a TA for tying shoes. So how do you tie your shoes, right? Now, this is a question for you guys. Take a second and tie your shoe.
How do you tie this?
I guarantee we're all going to do it a very different way, right?
I put mine through the loop because I don't want the laces to be seen.
That's old school and I like it.
Old school way.
But we go, all right, cool. We're going to grab both laces and they come up. And then we make an X. Now, most commonly, there's two ways to tie a shoe. You got two bunny ears or a tree and you go around it. Well, this is a really good learning experience for staff. Because I went, when did you see them tie their shoe? And he went, well, this is like, I put it in. And I said, okay. Did you check with the parent? And they go, no. I said, well, think about it. How do they tie their shoe? Because when we teach people the skills that we know how to do in our specific way. Which means, and this is a skill that we don't teach in multiple ways, which way is the most important? The way that they can be supported.
So the one that's most successful and gets the terminal goal.
And Mom was super awesome. We said, well, I'll learn the other one. I said, well, we're gonna do yours first, because that's the teaching one.
Yours is the more superior way, Mike.
But I'm gonna teach you how to do the other one in the event that we have to go down that route. But again, small things like that, because if I'm teaching two bunny ears and for 30 minutes a week they're learning around the tree, we're doing two totally different things.
Loop, swoop, and pull.
And it gets really confusing. So no wonder you see challenging behavior in those instances. And then you get parents that are like, well, I tried this one and I tried this one and no one's doing the same thing. And now we're breaking down skills in the wrong directions because we haven't taken 2 seconds to say, well, how do you do this skill?
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah,
I'll do even thing, hand washing.
Yeah.
Right? Does it matter if you put the soap on your hands first or turn the water on?
I don't know. We got to look at the science.
But I use that one as a really good example all the time because does it matter which one came first?
It's like the chicken or the egg argument.
It really doesn't matter. Right?
Whatever
if the job got done, like you can't dry your hands before you put soap on them.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. But if you want to turn the water on, then get soap, or get soap, then turn the water on, or wash your hands first, then get soap, at the end of the day, were your hands clean?
Yeah,
and did you get soap on them and wash them?
It's permanent product with data recording.
Yeah. And that's, again, I think we do a weird job of that at times, where certain people from either a BST perspective get it like, well, they said they have to turn on the water first. So turn on the water first, and they block people from getting soap. And I'm like, no, don't. Let it happen. If that's easier for them in the moment, then that's easier for them in the moment.
Like that's like, oh, this client, they can't master hand washing. They keep forgetting to turn the water on. And like a lot of times I just go to parsimony. I'm like, well, did you just watch them and wait them out and see if they can do it? Or it's like, oh, they're 90% correct with their TA for hand washing. And they're like, all right, well, let's just watch it and let's actually just look at the permanent product. Are their hands clean? Like, I don't care if they did 3 pumps of soap on their TA. If they put 1 pump of soap on and their hands are clean, that's what's more important. Yep. Not if they followed your stupid TA that you designed on a whim during your non-billable time because you didn't take the time to actually watch the client.
Yeah. And again, when we look at TAs are references of small skills to get to the big skill, which means, hey, maybe we change the wording to appropriate amount of soap, right? Or it's clean to this standard, right? And if not, guess what? Now you have the opportunity to do it again because it's already in place.
You got any more stories?
So
for the sake of time, you got a story.
Yeah, so I'll give you 2.
All right, go.
So one of them,
you have more than I do, so I'm going to let you take the lead with the stories.
So one of them, and this is kind of I won't say it's a universal thing because I think everyone's their own independent person, but I think we as BCBAs at times we get very accustomed to working with individuals, and then we have ownership. Right? And I absolutely despise that concept of, that's my kiddo. You're not their parent.
I was about to say, you the mom? You their dad?
That's number one. You are not their parent. I understand it. I hear you. And that goes back to the too many hands in the soup. Right? Because what we don't want, and I think it's what we've seen in the field, is you will come and work with my kid. Right? And this, I'll give you a prime example. When we utilize a telehealth model and we don't support each other, i.e. you don't check in with me before you go and see Johnny because I'm on vacation or whatever, and you go and...
Where are you going on that vacation?
Staycation.
I got a couch cruise where I sit there with my bowl of my protein and I do sit-ups while watching... what do you watch?
I don't watch TV.
You don't watch TV. That a boy. Good boy.
What will end up happening is you come in and across one session, maybe 2, you have changed 14 different things, right? So number one,
it's my kid.
Did we talk about it, right? Because if we're going to work together, even as BCBAs, I should be saying, hey, Sean, can you go check on Johnny this week and do this, this, and this? Because I want your input. I need your feedback because a second set of eyes can be a really good thing. Because it's not just about us collaborating with other individuals. We also have to collaborate with each other because we come from very different backgrounds with very different experiences. And that's a huge piece of it.
That's a great point because that's talking about when we think of collaboration, we were talking about collaboration with other disciplines, but do we even collaborate effectively with each other?
I would say not to the extent that we should be. And I think it becomes that level of ownership because it talks of, we kind of talk about well, I'm right versus you're right? Or you're more right. Again, it's not about who's right. Let's look at this situation. Have you come in contact with it before? What does their research say? What does their history look like? And then, again, I'm not afraid to admit I was wrong. Hey, Sean, I don't really know what I'm doing right now. I've never seen this before. Can you help me?
Absolutely. I'd love to help you.
Because, again, it's not about can I figure it out? Because at the end of the day, I'm sure that as providers, we could all figure it out. Right? But is that the right answer? Is that the quality care that we should be giving?
It's client first.
And I think ownership plays a big piece in that. And that's as a field from like just an ABA lens, right? And please feel free to let us know what you guys experience across other disciplines. If we can effectively collaborate with each other, then there won't be that level of ownership. It'll be that, hey, I'm really I need your help. Can you go check this out? Or just to flat out, Sean, can I do anything for your kiddos this week? Yeah. And you go, yeah, actually, can you do this? Or can you give staff feedback about this? Because the reality is our opinions and our research and our experience makes the world of a difference. We just have to use it the right way.
Yeah, it's great talking point.
I think that's a big field problem, and I want to know what that looks like in other disciplines.
I mean, it's a great talking point. Do you have any other stories that you want to mention? I'll let you, for the sake of time.
Yeah, I got you covered.
Give us this story, and then after this story, I'm just going to go into the hot take.
Yeah.
Because the hot take's going to nail the point.
So one of the biggest frustrations that we've had, and we've kind of talked about, is the concept of being right. And also the concept of being misunderstood and where our values lie in the field, right? And I won't say like values, I will say boundaries across our professions, right? Because private versus public versus school versus all of the things, we have very different, I would say, rules that we have to follow. Even though I genuinely want to believe we all have the best intentions for our kids and families. So I'm in an IEP meeting and we are genuinely like...
We're cruising. Dude.
I wish. So you've seen Looney Tunes.
Oh, I've seen it.
Right? Where it's duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season. Cool. Keep that one in mind.
Sounds about right.
Now you've seen Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Where they're running around the tree.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jerry just kind of like steps out to the side and Tom's just...
Continue
right?
on.
This was literally us in the meeting. I wish I was lying. We would go back and forth on... hey, this is what's happening. This is what we need to learn. Well, no, they have that skill. And I go, well, no, they don't, because here's the reason. So I'll give you the overview of the situation. So when we're talking about communication, let's talk about functional communication, right? Now, this gets a very different interpretation, a different opinion, a different understanding, depending on who you talk to and where you talk to them. Right? Because if we come from our lens, right, for majority of BCBAs and behavior analysts and individual in the field of ABA, when you look at functional communication, you're looking at a replacement behavior to get access, attention, whatever it is, it meets that equivalent.
It meets the equivalent function to the behavior trying to replace. That's what it means.
Right? If I can't open this, then my replacement behavior is help or open or something, right?
Or a punch to the face.
It could be, because that's what works.
That could have been reinforced.
But we went back and forth, and we talked about functional communication. And they went, well, he has functional communication. I said, okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding this. I'm going to give you a scenario. You tell me yes or no. You are the learner. You cannot open your pencil case. Do you ask for help independently? And they went, well, no, that's not realistic. We just come over and ask him if he needs help. And I went, hold on. So he's not functionally communicating. He's responding to your request.
That's listener responding.
And
behavior.
They went, well, that's not a realistic situation. I said, okay, let's take it one further. Again, I made the same face, and sometimes my face gets away from me in meetings and it gets me in trouble. But I made that same face, and I went, what do you mean? That doesn't make sense in my brain. And I went, okay, let's bring it to a different situation. We love to go to certain locations, right? So let's pick a grocery store, right? I get lost.
Help!
Right? Do I know who to go to or what to say? And will I do it by myself? Because yes, the reality is, for a lot of individuals and a lot of people in our field, most people are good. And they're going to walk up to you and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you need something? And maybe that will be the prompt of, oh, actually, I need help, right? Or vocally, I need help, or I'm lost. But again, let's talk about verbal behavior, Mr. Skinner, right? Communication implies that my verbal behavior dictates your verbal behavior. Therefore, if your verbal behavior has stimulus control over mine, I'm not communicating. I'm responding. And I said, how do we know that he can functionally communicate if he never asks you for anything? And the response was, well, he doesn't need to because we're here. And I went, but that's not learning. And we just continued to go around.
It's just circular reasoning. It's just going all over and over.
And
That's
I think,
frustrating.
But I think the reality of and this is kind of a field problem is when we look at individuals with autism, Down syndrome, related disorders, right? Still, people look at individuals with disabilities as disabled individuals, which they put a boundary and a box on what's capable. And that's not true, right? Cool, we've identified the barrier. That does not make it a limitation. That means that you, me, and everybody else has to get creative and say, how do we make this the most independent skill, the most independent version for the individual? Because, cool, you can't do it right now. That doesn't mean you can't ever do it. And I think we look at individuals and go, well, they'll always have someone with them. I hear you, and that might be the case, but they might also come into a situation where they have nobody. And now they're alone. And now they can't do anything because they don't have that skill because we didn't prep them early on.
Yep.
And it's just a continued feeding problem of, well, that's not realistic. And I'm like, yes, it very much so is. The reality is, if we want independence, then we should be programming, planning, and supporting those things, A, at an early age, and B, consistently, right? Because I don't want to find out what if when I'm in the situation. Because at that point, it's too late.
Yep. To touch on your point about the communication thing, I got a story. Mm-hmm. You're gonna like this story because you love PECs. Mm-hmm. So to touch on that point about communication, working with a client, speech generated device, mm-hmm. right? Using the PECs protocol, the crosswalk to get you over, using the PECs protocol on a speech generated device.
They have, just as an aside, they have a fantastic bridge program to go from PECs to SGD.
So that's
wonderful.
So that's what I'm using, right? So I'm using this bridge program, and I'm trying to collaborate care with the speech therapist, right, for this particular client. And the answer I'm getting from the speech therapist, I'm like, listen, got an AAC, I got some great data on it. We're using the PECs protocol. She just goes, how dare you use the PECs protocol? Mm-hmm. It's outdated.
Yep.
Now that we have iPads and technology, how dare you use, the Velcro?
It's archaic.
Right, it's archaic, all this stuff, right? And I'm just like, well, no, I'm using an speech generated device. I'm using, tap to talk and explain to it. And she goes, oh, well, that is my scope. Like, that's my practice. I need to handle that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I just took it and said, great. How are you doing it? Show me how you're doing it. And she was like, oh, it's really simple. We loaded, I don't want to say it was condescending, but yeah, screw it. Yeah, it was kind of a condescending tone. And it was, oh, well, this is how we load it. And when we teach high-tech augmentative communication, we like to load it with all the words. And we put all the words in there. And we put help and more and open and all done and all these functional words because that is this client's voice. And what we do is when the client hits the button, we then listen to what's coming out of the button. And if they hit the button and it says help, we then go and give that help. And then when they hit the button that says more, we then go and give that more. So basically I was like, okay, that's great. So let me rephrase. Active listening, practicing active listening. And I just went, okay, so what you're telling me is that you are responding to the sound of what's coming up. So you're basically responding to the voice and what's coming out of the device like it's the client's own words. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. It sounds like you get it. Great. That's awesome. I said, I just have a couple questions. I was like, just hear me out. So if the client is in the bathroom and they're out of toilet paper and they hit the button and it says help, but no one's in the room and you don't hear it, what happens? Oh, well, that'll never happen. They'll never be alone.
It's crazy.
I was like, oh, okay. All right. Got it. Who's carrying the device? Oh, we hold it. Okay. So, well, what happens if no one's there to hold it? Does the learner take the device wherever they're going? Oh, well, that'll never happen. There'll always be someone there. I said, got it. Okay. So you're responding to the voice. All right. So what happens if I just, same pictures, you have the same pictures there, and I turn the volume down and the person's hitting the button.
Which happens so often on these devices.
And you can't hear the voice, but they're hitting the button. Do you respond?
Based on that protocol, no.
Well, yeah, because if we see her hitting whatever the button is, we'll then honor that. And I said, okay, well, that proves my point. All due respect, and for the sake of not sounding unprofessional, but you're basically teaching her how to be a butler with a bell.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I said. I was like, you're basically teaching her to hit a button and then you respond to whatever button they're hitting, right? But you're not even responding to the button. You're saying you're responding to the voice. So like, what happens if you switch the voices around but keep the buttons the same? And you switch the help voice with the all done voice. And she goes and she's hitting the help button. And, this client starts hitting the help button and it's responding, all done, all done, all done. You're responding to it, but we're hitting that help button, right? So the point I was trying to make is it's not the voice that has stimulus control. Mm-hmm. It's the button that has stimulus control. So how you're teaching it and responding to it, you're not teaching that client effectively. And I tried to be as professional as possible with it, but all kidding aside, needless to say, we're still doing ABA therapy and we're making progress with our speech generated device and we're no longer in speech. but again,
and I think that's also a barrier, right? Of, again, if you don't, not that you don't know your practice, right? But if you don't consider all of the other variables, right? Of just because it might not be a reality doesn't mean it can't ever occur, right? And I'll use that exact example because I teach it that way to start, but differently, right? We need the buy-in. Number one, we should be teaching things that hold value to the individual, right? Shout out to PECs. If it's not important to them,
oh yeah,
I'm not teaching it.
We can get on a whole PECs thing. We're going to have a whole thing on AAC device and PECs, but like for sake of time, it was more just like that coordination wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was bad. And to my defense too, this is what my hot take was going to be on it. Yeah. You'll agree with me with this, but it's not the science that is the problem. It's not the disciplines that are the problem. The real hot take is its ego is the problem.
100%.
Ego is a problem across all disciplines, including myself in that situation, because I was sitting there from my clinical hill as a BCBA and saying like, no, this is not effective because I'm seeing this client for, more hours in a week and I'm seeing the progress, right? So let's just rip the Band-Aid off here. Like most interprofessional drama and drama in our field, it has nothing to do about methods. It's not about data. It's about ego, language, and assumptions. So you walk in thinking you're the smartest in the room. You walk in thinking your discipline is holier than now. You've already lost in that situation. And that goes for us looking at interventions from an SLP or an OT. That goes for an SLP looking at us sideways with a token board. It's not just an ABA problem. It's a helping professions problem. There's been a lot of digs about ABAs too robotic. They just want compliance. They don't get trauma, but that's not true. Let's be real. We can also be dismissive as well when we return the same shtick. And I guess, it's not about being right. It's just about being effective. And that's the hot take for me today.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think as a whole, and I think it's, to go off into that subtle mentalism and like philosophical aspect of things, like as a whole, no one wants to be wrong.
No. Right?
Because we know that when we're wrong, there's typically some level of like, either ridicule or embarrassment or all of the, those mentalistic style terms, which lead to frustration, right? Because it feels good to be right. It feels good to be heard, which means I want to be right. But this isn't the field for that. And it's hard to check that ego at the door because I need to be willing to admit that, hey, maybe I did mess up. And that's okay. That's my bad. I'm going to own it. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do moving forward. And I owe it to the other individuals to step aside and say, hey, you know what? Show me. Because there's nothing wrong with that. And then the same vein of if they see me doing something that they don't agree with, tell me why. Call me out on it. It's not in a, you're doing that wrong. It's a, have you thought about it this way? Because phrasing is super important. If you come at me super hot and you're like, listen, this is what better happened because of this, I'm going to be like, okay, when you're ready, we can talk about it. If you need a minute, that's totally fine.
I love that.
Right? Versus, hey, I see that you're struggling with this. This is what we're currently doing. Would you want some assistance with that? Or are you open to trying some new things? And again, that sounds super inflated, right? And you got to know your audience. But if we're able to take that step back, focus on the individual and their needs and what's important to them, then we really shouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Because that's where that growth happens, because we're finally all on the same team and we want to make a difference.
Mike, that was literally what I was going to say to end the show.
I'm a mind reader.
Like, look, bottom line, coordination isn't optional. Collaboration is not optional. It's actual clinical competence. Like, that is your clinical competency. We should be coordinating, care, and collaborating. So, like, if we expect our clients to generalize skills across all environments, one of the 7 dimensions, then we better be able to generalize our professionalism across different interdisciplinary teams, right? And look, I'm not saying it's about holding hands and agreeing on everything. It's not kumbaya, right?
Nope.
You're gonna have disagreements, right? But you have to create alignment on what matters, right? So practice effective listening, invite feedback, ditch the jargon, speak in layman's terms, practice empathy with people outside of your discipline, and own your own damn mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, when you make mistakes, that's when the dynamics of your team grow. You said something very telling about how, I forgot exactly what you said, but it had to do with like the client makes progress, and like the client doesn't care who it is, right? Bottom line is, last time I checked, and this is going to be my closing line before I let you take it off, we're the only ones that care about the letters after our name.
Yep.
The client could give 2 damns what the letters are after your name, right? What they care about and what they should care about, and this is for families too, not letting your ego get in the way of their progress. And if you let the ego get in your way, it don't matter how many letters you have after your name. It doesn't matter if it's SLP, OT, MA, BCBA, LBA, QBA, QRX, TUV, WXYZ, Esquire, Staff Sergeant. It don't matter. Like, none of that matters. What matters is, don't let your ego get in the way of clinical progress. Play nice in the sandbox. And that's all I have to say.
Amen. I think as a whole, as we continue to not only support each other and having difficult conversations and being a part of each other's journey, right? The more that we're able to step into the other subject domains and support each other, and most importantly, support families in knowing that, hey, you guys should be working together. Because once they get involved and they're like, well, we do it this way, so like, you guys have to meet now. And they hold all of us accountable, right? So if we're leading from the center, if we all support the family and say, hey, look, we're all supposed to play nice. No matter what, if we all care, we're going to play nice with each other. Which means now they get to hold us accountable and say, hey, I need you 2 to talk so we're on the same page. And that's how we continue to grow as a field, because now we're forced to check our egos. Even if you don't want to, someone, whether it's you, me, a speech, OT, PT, the school, if we all go, it's not about that, right? Professionally, then we can actually make a difference and see actual change that we want to see.
Bingo. Love it, Mike. Love it. We're rad and bad. We don't just talk behavior. We challenge it, right, Mike? That's
Amen.
what we do. I hope this conversation is going to light a fire under our field's butt. Because, if we need to do better as a field with coordination and collaboration. So take it away, Mikey.
Well,
take us out of this.
That's it for us tonight. Be sure to like, follow, give us a comment. If you're interested in coming on board, please send us a message. We'd love to have you. If you're looking for some pretty sweet ABA merch or merch in general, please let us know. It's all on hickorylearninggroup.org /. That's it until next time. Stay rad and bad.
See you.